I remember watching Snow White a lot as a kid, and going back to it, I can definitely see why. This movie has a unique charm into it that creates an immersive, magical, and dare I say, timeless experience in a way I don't think any other Disney movie has ever achieved. And the first factor playing into this is the animation and art style. Both are simpler and with character designs you won't see in most other movies, and a distinct look that makes you feel like you are in an actual fairy tale while you're watching. I also hadn't realized how much I miss the classic narration opening with the book until I started this marathon. The villain is also great. The evil queen doesn't have the deepest motivation, it's pure narcissism, but the way she presents herself is amazing. Her design is honestly my favorite Disney villain design. That cold and feeling look on her face makes her really intimidating. I legitimately don't think she showed any emotion other than anger or malice throughout the movie. The only issue I have with her is the death by plot armor, fall cliché. But this is the movie that started it, so I can't be too harsh on that. Plus, it's amazingly directed. Speaking of that, my god, the direction of the movie is simply brilliant. In fact, let me analyze my two favorite scenes to show you what I mean. First, the huntsman scene. Right off the bat, there is a genius contrast between Snow White and the huntsman, showcasing her in the light with a pleasant calming music playing in the background while he stands on the back covered in darkness. This is especially effective because the movie already made sure to tell us what he was ordered to do. He's going to murder her. Then, as he walks towards her, the music grows more and more intense, with our suspense being heightened from the clever uses of close-up shots and shadows, to the point we see him towering over her with a knife in hand, which is a legit jump scare. But that's nothing compared to the best scene in the movie, the scene where Snow White eats the apple. This scene is a masterclass of suspense. The scene starts with the witch walking towards the house with an ominous music playing in the background, and two menacing-looking vultures start following her, symbolizing mortal danger. This already sets up the stage for a very suspenseful confrontation. The next clever choice is the delay of the inevitable. We already know she will eat the apple, but the scene very cleverly plays with our expectation, constantly increasing the suspense and prolonging the wait until it happens. The scene keeps cutting back and forth between the fast-paced attempts of the animals and dwarves to save her before it's too late, and the slow-paced, increasingly claustrophobic attempts of the witch to convince her to take a bite, climaxing in a fast, violent crescendo as the witch meets her death. In a way, it's very reminiscent of the climax of Strangers on a Train, one of Hitchcock's best films. It's also very clever that the actual bite happens off-screen, and we only see an arm of the fallen Snow White, allowing our imagination to make the scene far scarier than it likely is. The songs are also really good. I'm not saying I'd put any of them in my top 10 or anything, but there's not a single song in this movie I don't like, which is a rare feat for Disney movies, as even the best of their works tend to have at least one bad song. I also like how both Snow White and the dwarves have a distinct type of tune for their songs, as this puts more emphasis on their characters, and this is a good place to talk about the dwarves. Their personalities are really distinct and well established, and their interactions are very entertaining. Grumpy is easily my favorite. Being an introvert with a low social tolerance towards strangers, he's my spirit animal. I also love how he's secretly a softie. It's a really cool detail that gives him more depth. I do wish some of the others got some similar depth or some more background on how they met or why they live in a small house in the forest where they own a diamond mine, but their personalities are so well defined, the lack of depth doesn't take out of the story in scenes. Like the funeral one near the end, scenes like that are still very effective. Seriously, people talk about Mufasa's death, but this is the one scene that still gets me to this day. Especially Grumpy once again, breaking into sobs. Man, it's a hard scene to get through. And now that I discussed all the things I like about the movie, let's talk about the things I don't like about it. The first issue is Snow White herself. As far as Disney main characters go, she's really bland. I mean, she is like 13, so basically a child here, so it makes some sense for her to be naive and simple-minded. And her immense kindness and cheerfulness is admirable for someone having a deranged stepmother trying to murder her. She's just not as compelling as future Disney leads, which doesn't harm the movie itself as much as it harms its watch value. What does harm the movie itself is the prince. For those of you who don't know, back in the early days, Disney was very limited in what they could do with humans, because they were too hard and expensive to animate with the technology of the time. This is a problem we're going to run into in future reviews as well, and it definitely affects this movie through the prince. Simply put, he's not a character. He is a plot device. He only appears in one scene before the finale and barely has any dialogue. Heck, he doesn't even have a name. The problem with that is that it got the emotional payoff of the story. I don't know anything about him, and he and Snow White barely bond, so I feel nothing about their happy end. Even Sleeping Beauty had more of a depth in the relationship of the characters, and one of them spends most of the movie being asleep, and because they have no bond and he has no direct involvement in the story, him searching for her and saving her in the end comes out of nowhere. And yeah, the biggest problem of the movie is the final kiss. Now look, I'm not one of those morons that look too deep into shit trying to deem every old movie problematic. I won't try to argue that this is sexual assault or anything, but this scene is just stupid. Why would the kiss reverse a magic poisoning? To be fair, the movie does set it up when the witch studies the spell, but setting up a dumb idea doesn't make it any less dumb. And more importantly, how could the prince know about it? And why does he kiss a corpse in the mouth if he doesn't? I understand the appeal of using true love as a deus ex machina in fairy tales. It's a good way to distinguish the heroes from the villains and show that love will always triumph over hate. But here's the thing, the original story didn't even include that. It was a Disney edition. In the original fairy tale, the prince sees her and wants to give her a proper funeral befitting a princess. And as his men walk her to the funeral, one of them trips, drops the casket, and the impact dislodges the apple that's still in her throat and solves the curse. This is much better. Why did you have to change it? Now, normally I would say I hope the live action remake will give the main characters more depth and rectify some of these issues. But apparently, the remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs will have a non-white princess and no dwarfs. What the f***, Disney? I thought the Lion King remake was a stupid idea, but this takes stupidity into a whole new level. But I digress. Let's get back to this movie. The final thing I want to talk about is the dialogue. I'm pretty mixed on the dialogue. Most of the lines are spoken in a weird rhyming scheme. On the one hand, this helps increase the fairy tale immersion I was talking about earlier. On the other hand though, it gets tiring really fast. This feels like an idea that could have had a much better execution. All in all, Snow White is far from a perfect movie, but it is a very distinct one, with many interesting aspects that far outweigh its negatives. After this review, I believe it definitely deserves the timeless classic title. Join me next time as we tackle a story of a puppet and his journey into becoming a real boy.